Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Today, we're going to talk about demand and the factors that affect demand. So, we were first going to talk about the concept of quantity demand and then talk about how to derive the demand curve. Finally, we will see what factors can shift the demand curve. So let's first talk about quantity demand. So to understand demand is a concept that helps us to understand the relationship between price and the amount we purchase. So to understand that, we first have to talk about quantity demand. Quantity demand is basically telling us at a given price, what is the amount individuals are willing and able to buy. So quantity demanded is telling us, so given the price, so usually what this means that this notion tells us that we are a price taker. What price taker means is that we take the price as given and then we decide whether to purchase that product or not. So we don't just go and buy a product. We first look at the price and then decide whether we should purchase the product or not. So given this quantity demanded, so basically given a price of a product, so basically if eggs are $2 a dozen, I look at that price and then I decide whether I should buy a dozen eggs or more or no eggs at all. So, and individuals have to be willing to purchase that product. They must have a desire to purchase it. So there are products, let's say that I don't like peanut butter. Even if peanut butter is affordable, I will not purchase it. So I have to be willing to purchase it. And I also have to be able to purchase it. So there, which means that the product is within my buying reach. So it could be that I may want to purchase another house, but I am not able to purchase it because I don't have enough credit or I don't have enough savings for me or I don't qualify for a loan. So both these have to meet in order for us to buy or them in order for us to buy a certain amount of good at a given price. So how do we come up with the demand curve? So what we do is it is a concept where we first go about and we create something called a demand schedule. A demand schedule is basically it shows the relationship between price and the quantity demand of person. Let's just call this person 1. So it tells us, okay, at given prices, what is the quantity that we purchase? And then the last one will be quantity demanded of the market. So let's say we are asking 2 people what their quantity demanded are for different prices. So I am going to ask at price $1, $2, $3, $4, and $5 at different prices. I'm going to ask a person. Let's call this person Pat and this person Chris. So I'm going to ask Pat, okay, if let's say that the product is coffee. If coffee is $1 a cup, how many cups of coffee would you buy in a day or in a week? And let's say Pat says 10. And then I ask, okay, what if the price is $2? How many would you purchase? Let's say it's 8. What about price at $3? Maybe Pat says 5. And then at $4, maybe it's 3. And then at $5, it's 2. So at different prices, Pat purchases different amounts. Now let's ask Chris again. Okay, Chris, I'm asking the same questions as Pat. At $1, how many cups of coffee would you buy? Chris may say 15. And then at $2, it may be 12. At $3, it may be 10. And then 7. And then 5. Notice one thing that I did here. It is like as the price of the product is going up, the quantity demanded, let's write quantity demanded here. Quantity demanded of Pat and Chris are both falling. So as we increase price, the quantity demanded is falling. And the reason why I did that is because of what we call the law of demand. And it says that as price increases, our quantity demanded decreases. So this is of individuals, of Pat and Chris, but now let's say we have not just 2 people in this market, basically, we have many other people, but let's just say for now these are the 2 people in the market. So the quantity demanded of the market, it would be basically the sum of individual demands at a given price. So at $1, Pat wants 10 cups, Chris wants 15 cups. So in total, we would have 25 cups being demanded in the market at $1. At $2, it is 20. At $3, it is 15. $4, it is 10. And at $5, it is 7. So basically, if I added another person here, then I would just keep on adding that individual's quantity demanded in the market and keep on increasing the quantity demanded for a given price. So we can see here, the more individuals there are in the market, the higher will be the quantity demanded. Now, based on these two data, so based on the price and the quantity demanded, we can draw the demand curve for this market. So if I were to draw that, so first thing I need to do is draw a graph. So in our case, whenever we draw the demand curve, the price is always going to be in the vertical axis, and the quantity is always going to be in the horizontal axis. We cannot switch these values. We cannot put quantity in the vertical axis and price in the horizontal axis. Price must always be in the vertical axis. So if I look at the first one, at $1, my quantity demanded is 25. So at $1, I would go all the way to 25 and I would put a dot here. At $2, it is 20, so I would go all the way here, and this number is 20. At $3, it is 15, so at 15. At $4, it is 10, and at $5, I have 7. So at $5, it is somewhere. And so if I draw the line like this, this would be now my demand curve for coffee. So this is what we would call a demand schedule. This table that we have, this table is called a demand schedule. And using this demand schedule, we draw the demand curve. Now the demand curve, because it follows the law of demand, that is, as price goes up, quantity decreases, demand curve is always going to be downward sloping like this. There are some exceptions where we may see demand curve to be vertical or horizontal, but those are much rarer. Usually, for the most part, for most goods, the demand curve is going to be downward sloping like this. Now we're going to look at what factors affect demand. So the demand curve we drew right now, this one is not a static thing. So there are many factors that could affect our demand curve. And if I draw the demand curve here, so this was drawn based on the information that we collected on that day. It could be that the day was a hot day and so people just did not want to drink coffee. But if it's a cold day, more people may want to drink more coffee. So my quantity demanded could change for a given price based on different situations. So let me write the quantity down here, and this is my generic demand curve. Now, the factors affecting demand, there are many non-price factors that can affect or shift the demand curve. So we're going to look at some of those factors and then see how they affect the demand curve. So the first one is the number of buyers. Now, as we have seen before, if I added more buyers, so let's say for every price, let's say if this is $7, at this price, maybe I have quantity demanded is 20. Now, if I add more buyers in the market, they will definitely have more columns like this added. So instead of Pat and Chris, we may have John, Mary, David, Margaret, everyone else being added in the market. And so each of them will have a different quantity demanded. And so the market quantity demanded will increase. So what we can see is from here, if number of buyers increase, demand will shift to the right. Or we can also say demand will increase. So what this means that for every price, now we have a higher quantity demanded. And so consequently, the demand curve then shifts to the right. Also, I can see that if the number of buyers decrease, so if there are people leaving the place, leaving the market or the area, then demand will be for each and every price, quantity demand will be lower, so demand will shift to the left or decrease. So for that, we would see that in that case, demand will move to D prime and will shift to the left. So number of buyers definitely has an effect on demand. The second one is income. Now with income, we have two types of goods. One is what we call a normal good, and a normal good is a good whose demand goes up as income increases. So for example, restaurant meals. When we have a higher income, if our income goes up, we tend to eat out more at more expensive restaurants, and so demand for those items goes up. So in that case, if we can say if income goes up and the good is a normal good, then demand will shift to the right, which is telling us demand is going up. So under that case, we see demand shifting to the right to D prime. And so, consequently, if income falls, then demand for normal goods will shift to the left. So if we see incomes falling, maybe there's a recession coming, or maybe people are not earning as much, demand for normal goods will shift to the left. There's another type of good, just like in normal good, we have the flip side of normal good, which we actually call inferior goods. Now, this is not talking about the quality, it's just how it was named. It is a good whose demand will decrease as incomes go up. So if income goes up, people tend to buy less of those goods and more of other goods. So some examples are maybe TV dinner would be an inferior good. As we get more, as we start earning more income, we don't want frozen dinners. We want to have either freshly cooked dinners or we want to go and eat out. So an example could be TV dinners. So in that case, if income goes up, demand of inferior goods shift to the left. So it goes the other direction. So in that case, an increase in demand or an increase in income shifts the demand curve for inferior goods to the left. And so if incomes go down, their demand goes up. So also if income decreases, then demand for inferior goods shift to the right, so it increases. Now the other kind of good we have is, again, we're looking at goods, so it could be type of good. So again, we have two types of goods. One is what we will call a complement. Complement is a good that goes well with another good. So we consume them together. For example, computers and software. So if I buy a computer, I need a software. I need Windows or Apple's operating system to run my computer. So computers and software are complements. Or cars or automobiles and gasoline. If I drive a gasoline-driven car, then basically if I buy an automobile, I need gasoline. So for these goods, I can see that if price of one complement goes up, so which means, let's say gasoline gets more expensive, then demand for the other complement will decrease. So if complement price of, let's say, cars go up, then demand for gasoline should go down. So again, let's write price and quantity. So if this is my demand curve, and we see this is demand curve of cars, we know gasoline price goes up, then people will not be as interested to buying automobiles. They may buy electric cars. So demand for that product should shift to the left. Now, on the other hand, if price of one complement goes down, so if gasoline prices go down, then the price of the other complement should, or then the demand for the other complement should increase. So if gasoline, it becomes cheaper, let's say it's now much cheaper to fill up a tank of gas. Then cars will be, people will be like, it's much easier for me to commute using regular electric car or regular gasoline cars rather than electric cars. That should increase the demand for for regular cars. The other kind of good we have is what we call a substitute. So a substitute is goods that basically serve the same purpose, so one or the other. So for example, if I'm eating breakfast, I could have cereals or I could have bagels. So these would be substitutes. They basically serve the same purpose. They're both breakfast foods, so I could either have cereals or milk with as my breakfast, or I could have bagel and cream cheese. Or another example would be gasoline cars and electric cars. So they are substitutes of each other. So in substitutes too, if I were to draw the demand curve here, if I have one substitute, if the price goes up of one substitute, then the demand for the other substitute should also go up. So if price of one substitute goes up, then demand for the other substitute goes up too. Because let's say cars price goes up, let's say for some reason cars are more expensive and this is the demand of electric vehicles, EVs, then if price of cars are going up, then people may think that cars are now too expensive. I might just start buying an electric car. So demand for electric vehicles should go up. So on the other hand, if the price of one substitute goes down, then demand for the other substitute goes down too. So in that case, if price of cars decrease, if cars are more cheaper now, so if price of cars go down, then the demand for other electric vehicle or for electric vehicles should decrease. Then we have another one is number 4 is taste. So if customers prefer more of a good, then demand for that good goes up. So in this case, if we have, let's say, people are preferring to eat more salads and more kale, let's say, then if that's the case, then demand for kale should go up and increase or go up and move to the left or right. Sorry, I don't need a ruler, but price and quantity, I don't know why that showed up. And so if this was my demand for kale, let's say, now more people are eating kale. And then finally, we have expectations. So if I expect price to be higher in the future, then I might buy a product or the product now. So if everyone does that, then demand for the product will increase now. Okay, so let's say I'm expecting winters to be very cold this year. So in that case, I might start buying more of winter clothes. But just like me, other people might be doing the same thing. So as a result, demand for the product should be higher now, and it will shift to the left. Or right. So we can just write here, let's say winter clothes. On the other hand, if I expect the price to be lower, prices to fall in the future, then I might wait and buy the product later. Then, if everyone is doing the same thing, demand for the product will decrease now. Okay, so these are the different factors that affect demand: number of buyers, again, just a review, income, and depending upon whether the good is a normal good and an inferior good, the type of good, whether it's a complement or a substitute, taste of customers, and expectations. Now, one thing you notice is that price of the good itself does not shift demand. So in this case, we're saying if price changes, we just move along the demand curve. What that means is if price goes up or down, we tend to just move along the demand curve. So if I draw that here again, price and my quantity, and if this is my demand curve, let's say at price $5, the quantity was 100. And if price goes up to $8, I just move along this demand curve. From this point, I just keep on moving up to this point, and then just lower my quantity demanded to 80. Similarly, if price decreases, I move along the demand curve. So price of the good itself does not shift the demand curve. A lot of times we think that price will shift. If price of cars go down, where demand for cars should go up, but that is wrong. Okay, we just move. As price changes, we move along the demand curve. Our quantity demanded increases or decreases, but we don't really shift the demand curve. Hopefully this was beneficial, and I will see you at a later video. Have a good day.